Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to today's Fintech Hotseat Head-to-Head. My name is Craig Jeffrey, and I'm the founder and managing partner of Strategic Treasure. Our topic for today, our head-to-head topic for today is bank account management, and we're very pleased that you could join us as we consider the challenges and relevant solutions in this space. Our format is that each company will have 8 minutes to present, followed by 3 minutes of Q&A, a maximum of 11 minutes each. For audience questions, if you would like to ask a question to a particular presenter or about the topic in general, please put your questions in the chat box and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Our participants, as you can see on the screen, are Ion, Kariba, TIS, and Treasury 4. From TIS, presenting will be Johnny Moreland. From Ion, Stephen Coglianese. And please correct me if I say names wrong. From Kariba, it's Andrew Blair. And from Treasury 4, Randy DeVita and Ed Berry. Let's move into what are some of the challenges with bank account management. So this is a list of some of the challenges that companies face when managing bank accounts. It could be managing bank accounts across many banks, many countries in different regions. So coordinating account structures across borders can be challenging with different requirements for setup and management. So adapting to local banking regulations has an impact, and there's certainly challenges with managing portal users, portal authorities, controlling who are signers, both active and inactive. Another view and challenge of bank accounts and managing those is to ensure real-time or at least daily cash visibility. So instead of having banking data siloed off, and some you see daily, some you see moment by moment, some you see on a monthly basis, overcoming these separate pockets of banking data and having a unified view to see all of your balances across the board and all of the transactions on a global scale. Compliance and regulatory challenges are significant for many companies. In different regions, there's different requirements, but anti-money laundering, whatever the phrasing is that's used by country, is a big one. In the US, we have foreign bank account reporting and beneficial ownership information requirements that challenge organizations to report either ownership or high balances in accounts that are not held in particular domiciles based on a set of rules. And certainly different regional tax and reporting rules have to be followed. And how can we get support for that? The third area with the arrow and the circle pointing to the right is streamlining account opening and closing processes. Managing bank accounts takes paperwork, and to ensure we comply with the rules and the changes in an organization with signers moving in or out, changes happening, how do we reduce the manual paperwork and delays? Many banks have different scenarios and portals for managing the activity. How can we automate the approval workflows and documentation so that it's done efficiently and cost effectively? And also banking services are vital and important, but managing those effectively and efficiently can certainly save organizations money compared to those that don't. And finally, of this list of 5 that we're covering, enhancing liquidity optimization is a key area. How do we manage our cash pools across banks, not leaving trapped cash different places, or inaccessible cash, or cash that we don't see, and optimizing intercompany cash transfers are some of the ways that we have to use to manage and enhance liquidity optimization. So that brings us to our first presenter. I'll invite Johnny Moreland from TIS up. I'm going to stop sharing, let you pull your screen up. I can see it. It looks good to me. See a full screen, and I'll let you get started and I'll kick off the timer. So, Johnny, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for joining us. It looks like we've got a little over 150 people that are joining to hear about the topic. So it's obviously a topic close to everybody's heart. Bank account management with TIS is still one of the top items that we talk to corporate treasurers about that are still being managed in an Excel sheet. And a lot of times that is because that bank account list is just that. It's a list of accounts that are in the ecosystem. But for TIS, we see it so much more than just the list of accounts. Just to kind of kick off the conversation, and here's a couple of clients of ours who, when we approached them, they had issues with cash visibility, cash position visibility, as well as just general bank account understanding of what was in their ecosystem. Manpower Group, who is one of the largest staffing firms in the world, operating in 75 countries, have over 150 banks and 1,200 accounts in their ecosystem. And through this engagement, we're able to increase their visibility from 25%, less than 25% really, to greater than 80% in just a few months' time as we implemented our bank account management system. And TeamViewer, another example, 10 different entities, 7 banks, 39 accounts, a little bit smaller scale, but went from 33% to almost 100% in their daily global cash visibility through the implementation of our BAM tools and the broader ecosystem, the improvements that they made on this. So what do I mean by bank account management is more than just a list? We think at TIS that bank account management is all of the bank accounts, but all of the underlying account data that goes along with that. We see it as the single source of truth for managing those bank accounts and all of the underlying data, the workflows that come with changes to that data, whether that be signatories, access, who has access to those accounts in which countries, which BUs, giving you the ability to manage that in one central location. All the benefits that come with that include the ability to have an audit trail, changes to those signatories, changes to access. It's important from a regulatory and compliance perspective to be able to produce audit trails, be able to have workflows associated to those changes so that you can do those all in one central system. Beyond just the list of the accounts, it also includes balances. It improves your ability to see your exposure, whether that be in certain regions or BUs or entities, and have the ability to do something about it as it's coming through. You can monitor it on a real-time basis, be able to pull those into a dashboard, be able to execute your daily cash pool positions and make decisions that will help to improve the business operations. Furthermore, our system is a cloud-based system. It is deployed in such a manner that you can access it from wherever you're at in the world. You can be able to collaborate with other business lines and be able to really kind of pull all of that together with the system. You can monitor the account balances, as mentioned, be able to easily pull bank statements and other data in for automated reporting. You can view the bank account signees by account, track open and closed accounts, add or remove those signatories, all within the system. The other piece of this that is included is the ability to extract the data. So you have the ability to store it all. It's all there in one central location, but a lot of times you have to be able to pull that data into your ERP system, maybe your TMS system or your recon system. With TIS, we have the ability from an API perspective to do an extract, take all of that data that's in that central repository and be able to move it to other systems. So you don't have to maintain multiple systems of record as you're pulling that information out. This sets the foundation. Having this data in that central repository then sets the foundation for better visibility, better forecasting, better liquidity management, and working capital oversight. Hitting a lot of the things that Craig talked about at the beginning of the session that are challenges when it comes to bank account management. Beyond that, then you also have the benefits of the regulatory compliance, all of the FBAR reporting that's necessary, whether there's certain specific country or regional requirements for tax reporting, as mentioned. It's all in one central repository and able to be extracted from the system in a way that's usable and consumable. Finally, how does this all come together? We bring it into a single interface that's has all the connections for the bank accounts in the banks across the world. You have the ability to put customizable dashboards together. It gives you the ability to look at it by region. You can look at it by country. You can look at it by bank. You can look at it by BU, business unit, or even down to the specific account. If there's a question about a particular account, you can drill into it to see who the signatories are, who has access to it, what that balance is, and the statements that are coming into that. And you can set and customize these dashboards based on your business needs. So it's very flexible. We do have obviously canned dashboards that come out, but we work with you during the process to set these up that are going to be structured for your business and for the use that's going to most benefit you. You can create custom bank groups. If there's a particular entity that works in a group of countries, you can pull those together. You can do it by a region, currency, or otherwise. And then each one of these setups, region, country, BU, account, you have multiple signees that and the workflow processes that can be configured as you need to manage your business. Finally, just a little bit more, as I mentioned, this sets the foundation for a lot of other things. And I know we're not talking about some of those other things, but you get a picture here of what you have the ability to do. Setting the foundation first of knowing where your bank accounts are, having connectivity to those bank accounts, having connectivity to those banks opens up a world of possibilities for you to continue to enhance your treasury function. With that, I know I'm a little bit fast. Craig, you'll have to forgive me. This is my first time in the head-to-head space, so I went very quickly, but maybe that gives me a little bit more time to answer any questions that may have popped up.
It does. A question from the audience. We'll start off with that. How is data regarding signer status, currency type, account structure, et cetera, maintained and audited from the banks to the software? So how can your tool help support the audit function?
Sure. So within the setup process, as we are pulling together the banks and the information that's associated to that, typically what we do is a mapping process from wherever you're currently storing that data. So most of the time it's an Excel sheet. Sometimes we have special databases that have been set up outside of the banking systems. We'll do a mapping process initially. And then from there, everything is controlled within the system. So if there's a signer that needs to be added to an account, there'll be a workflow process. So as the signatory is added to an account, then it would kick off the configured workflow to approve that signatory being added to that particular account. But to begin with, we'll take an extract from the system of record that you have today, or if there isn't, we'll build the account structure as part of the implementation process.
Okay, so you can share that information with the bank. On a one-time basis, you can do that, but if you're doing, let's say, a review of one of your banks, you have 50 accounts and permissions. Can you send? Okay, so you could send that information to it.
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay. Feel free to drop the slide down if you want, so we can go full screen on there.
Sure.
Portal management is a challenge for many firms, right? No matter what you do with your system, there are some functions that have to be done in the portal. How does TIS support the rights, access, and services for managing portals?
Sure. So that's still, I will say that's still a bit of a gap in the industry. There's a number of specific partners, but it really has been a limitation with the integration with the bank portals themselves, right? So open API banking is opening up some of that discussion and our ability to communicate with those bank portals. Sure. But there's still a bit of a gap in the market from that perspective. But we have looked at and have opened up conversations with a number of banks with their APIs. But as the banks continue to get more sophisticated, then we'll have that as part of our roadmap and engagement with them as well.
Great, thanks. So the views and access, the principal of least privilege means that people can only see the banks or the accounts or the entities that they're entitled. How does your system support that type of functionality?
So within the system, there's a hierarchy of tables, right? So it will start with the organization level, drill down all the way down into the account level, but also within that structure, are the employee groups. So we can take and then do an integration into the Active Directory if there's an Active Directory within the customer and pull that information in. But that then the permission is set on the basis of who has permissions to be able to access those particular accounts or groups or entities as the hierarchy goes down.
Last question really quickly. In what ways can your system support consistent security with policies? Let's say banking services such as debit filtering.
So the debit filtering would be set up as a within the account structure with groups. So we could set up debit functions, or whether that's ACH or whatever those functions are within each one of those bank functions, and then assign groups or users to those groups that drill down into their ability to do those functions.
Excellent. Well done.
The question right.
You did great. Thanks for covering that. That brings us up to Ion. So Steve, if you would load your file, come on screen. Thank you so much, John,
Right.
and TIS. That was excellent. We cover a lot quickly. And when your screen comes up, looks like it's loading. This is excellent. So Stephen from Ion, feel free to go ahead. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Really excited to be here today. Steve Coglanis, I've been with Ion for about 15 years, working with bank account management, bank fee analysis. I'm the global head of our tool called IBAM. Just a quick background on Ion itself. We're leading provider of treasury and risk management solutions. On the top part of the screen here, you can see the treasury management systems that we offer, specifically related to bank account management. Like I mentioned, I am the global head of the IBAM tool. So IBAM is SaaS accessible. It's our full bank account and bank fee analysis platform combined in one solution. We provide a comprehensive and configurable solution. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means, but as you can see on the top part of the screen, we are proponents of choice. So we realize not everything is one size fits all. So when I talk about configurability, that really lends itself well to the bank account management space, because as we'll see, not every process for every treasury and not every bank is going to follow a similar process. So the configurability lends itself to that. We're fully integrated with all of the Ion treasury management solutions, but what we'll talk about a little bit too is the ability to use IBAM standing alone if you're not an Ion customer of our treasury management solutions. So the usage of our available APIs. Now, let's set the discussion about bank account management. You know, in a world right now where everything seems to be digital and automated, you know, there's self-driving cars. My kids are using ChatGPT to do homework. It's just, it's kind of crazy how automated things are. We're seeing that the banking space, bank account management, really hasn't caught up to that much. There's little spaces here and there where it's sort of trying, but it kind of lends itself to the question, like, does it really have to be this complicated? And what I have up on the screen right now is sort of an outline of what does the process look like for our clients, right? So it's extensive, right? It's pretty manual. There's the internal process that happens before you even reach out to your banks. Emails, there's intake forms, there's lots of approvals that sometimes have to happen in order for a bank account request to even get out the door. And then the request process itself involves a lot of physical forms. In some cases, a lot of banks are still requiring wet signatures. And then you have to ask yourself, how are we actually communicating with the bank? Once that gets kicked off, there's a lot of documentation that goes into that. So an important piece of all of bank account management is KYC. There's a lot of manual work to get documentation together. Again, more wet signatures, storage of the documentation, approvals, all of that for a lot of our clients is pretty disparate. Now, once everything gets to the bank, what we realize, and Craig sort of outlined this in his introduction, is the process is not always the same, right? So it's not a standardized process. It can be quite different based on where you are in the world. Forms can change by region, and so on and so forth. So once all of those things get sort of like figured out with the bank, there's the internal side of things, right? So you have the bank account open, but where are you inputting that bank account data? Oftentimes we're seeing corporations having to rekey that in multiple places. And as we're all pretty well aware, it's often Excel based, right? So at Ion, what we offer our clients is a centralized and accurate inventory of all of this data, right? So it's not just bank accounts, but it's everything surrounding bank accounts. It's your bank account data, it's signatory information, it's the fees that come with the services that you're tracking, it's the portal users, and it's also the documentation that you're tracking not only with the bank, but also internally as well. Okay, so these schematics right here sort of talk about the different areas that IBAM touches. So authorization, visibility, getting information into the system, getting access across multiple different areas of the company is a vital piece of bank account management, getting it centralized. In IBAM, we believe that automation is key. So having automated workflows that are configurable by client is a really key component that we think solves a lot of problems. But also around that is documentation. So we help our clients with auto-filling documentation that needs to go out to their banking partners. And we also have integration built in with digital signing solutions. So we did talk a little bit about services, right? So tracking services on bank accounts. You're not just opening an account and using it. You're having services that the bank provide you. Banks charge for those services, right? So getting visibility into that and rolling that into your cash positioning, your decision making related to banking relationships is important. So having a bank fee analysis tool sitting next to the bank account management is a piece that we think is very vital. And then integration. So you're not just using a solution in a silo and then having to manually take data out of the system and put it somewhere else. So integration is a key component at Ion. As I mentioned before, the IBAM solution connects in with all of our treasury management systems. And we also have clients who've used other treasury management providers who are able to integrate in with this solution standing alone. The last piece, which is really important, is around reporting. So you want to get data out of the system. And a key component of that is regulatory compliance. So we're fully FBAR compliant, can pre-fill the FinCEN 114 and file it directly from the exported actual form from the system. Okay, so real quick, just on the bank fees, this just gives you a quick view that that's an important part of bank account and bank relationship management is visibility to the fees, transparency of what banks are charging, and analyzing those, getting them reconciled and identifying areas to save money. So one of the areas that we think is great for productivity improvement is around having the centralized workflows. So in our solution, our easy to understand user interface enables our clients to quickly input the bank account management details, get access to information quickly in one dashboard, but also get easy updates to understand, you're not opening one account at a time. Most times, different banks work at different speeds. So having access to those real-time updates is something that we think is important. And having these live graphical dashboards to give our users access to those updates is also a vital piece.
Thanks, Steve. So a question as we jump into the question part.
Yeah.
On the workflow management, you mentioned it's custom by customer. Can it also be done differently by region if there's a different flow within a region?
Yes. So So built into our workflows is the capability to branch the workflows, and it's highly configurable to how you do that. So for example, just giving you an example, we have clients who have treasury centers throughout the world. And so they base it on geography. So an account gets opened in Asia Pacific. We want this team and this process to be handled differently, right? So in my experience, certain parts of the world still require the wet signatures, right? So our clients are going to know, I need to download forms out of the system, get them wet signed, and either physically send them or email them. That's something that the system supports and can be configured.
Question from the audience about FBAR reporting requirements. How do you manage the control for having social security numbers or personally identified full information in the system to file?
So there's two options there, really. I would say it's pretty split in terms of how our clients handle it. IBAM's a roles-based system, so they can have elevated roles where the people who are responsible for filing FBAR would have access to that data. That data would be otherwise hidden to other users, so that when the FBAR forms get generated, only the people with those roles can generate the forms and see that data. In other cases, our clients have chosen not to input that data into the system, and instead, when the forms generate, it generates into an editable PDF. And so as they share that PDF with the FBAR filing people, then at that point, they can input that sensitive data.
Feel free to pull your slide down. The one last
Sure.
question, we have about 25 seconds for that. How can your system show relationships between entities, accounts, users, or the flow of funds, how the concentration system works?
Sorry, Craig, I was clicking the thing. I missed the first part.
Does your system show relationships between entities and users, or can it show the flow of funds? You got 10 seconds.
Yeah, so flow of funds, that is, we integrate in with the treasury management system. So flow of funds can flow in either direction. Oftentimes we're pulling that data in from our treasury management system, and integration between entities and users. Yes, it goes back to those custom roles that I mentioned before. The
Perfect.
users can see data based on their entity.
Thanks so much. Well done. Thank you, Ion and Steve, for showing that. Next up, we have Kyriba and Andrew Blair. If you would, you're on screen. If you would pop up your screen, and we'll get ready. All right. Excellent. And welcome. You may begin.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for having us today, and thanks everybody for joining. My name is Andrew Blair, and I am representing Kyriba today. I lead up the solution engineering team in North America for Kyriba. So happy to be with you all today. Just a quick overview on Kyriba generally. We are one solution that kind of covers a lot of the different areas that you would see in a traditional treasury management system. Bank account management being obviously one of those components. So I've highlighted the elements that I believe fit into the conversation today. Obviously, the traditional, what we call, bank relationship management, which is, the workflows and the approvals, bank fee analysis, things like that. But there's also a connectivity component, as you see in the bottom of the screen there, which gives us the ability to have all of that central visibility, all of the information flowing from a cash perspective, from a forecasting perspective. That is all, owned, managed, maintained, supported in one solution here, so that again you're kind of having that housed within the same database. And then I've also just highlighted very loosely in the bottom left the exposure management, as you kind of think about not just the actual visibility into your cash, but also the credit component that goes into all of the counterparties and the CDS ratings and things like that can be encapsulated in one view here. So just to drill down a little bit further into the more traditional bank account management as we see it. Again, I think each one of these topics could probably have their own 10, 15 minute overview. So I'll try to be relatively brief with this, but obviously, we are going to provide the centralized visibility into the accounts. I've, heard a few times on the session today, the flow of funds, being able to optimize, right? All of that is what we would kind of consider like core treasury competency, along with your, the actual liquidity management associated to that. And then we get into the more, again, what I would call historic, like traditional bank account management functions, which are the workflows, right? So the account workflow, the opening request, your approvals associated to that. Some good comments and questions earlier around, being able to dictate different workflows based on different jurisdictions, based on different account types, based on geographies potentially, right? That you need to route those bank account authorization schedules through. The signatory management, same type of effect, right? So as we are adding those accounts, we're also adding the signatories associated to those. There's the entire process of adding, updating, changing, removing signatories that are associated with those individual bank accounts. So again, being able to hone in on that specifically is part of the overall workflow. Reporting, I think that's kind of standard in any one of the topics that we ever get into, just in terms of being able to round that out, whether it be FBAR or just simple analytical type reporting as well. Just wanted a really, really quick slide because I think, again, as part of the bank account management function, the ability to connect with banks and bring that data into the solution centrally is an important one. I'm not going to read all of the statistics here, but we're happy and proud of the connectivity footprint that we have globally, both obviously on the statement information coming in from a reporting perspective, as well as the production of payments going out from an outgoing side as well. The very last slide before I jump into the solution a little bit, because I am a pre-sales guy, so I'm more comfortable in the system. But this is just, again, an overview of some of the components that, again, we think as you have all of this data within the system, the bank account record is the very first thing that you ever bring in any system, really, right? It builds everything else. What are you doing with that information, right? So being able to provide a centralized view of all of the, the accounts, the statuses, the signatory elements, as well as obviously the balances that are associated to that is a big part, of the overall piece here. So I'm just going to transition and just open up the system. Obviously, it's not a full solution demonstration, but I think as you kind of see or hopefully get an idea as what we were referring to on the overview slide, the bank relationship management is in the same construct or overview as the rest of the solution. So if I just drill into the bank account management area of the platform, one of the things that I try to emulate here is that all of the workflow components, and I'll just leave this up a little bit. Obviously, won't have time to click into every single one of these, but it's all centralized into one portal, one screen even. So what I've broken down here is you have all of the workflow functions on the left-hand side of the page. So again, whether it's the account opening workflow, the closing workflow, your signatory components within that. And then we have the responsible party, actually, or the typical responsible party on the column headers here. So again, just like some of the comments that were made previously, all of the workflows, all of the the routing of approval structures, it's all configurable. You can kind of dynamically segment how you're moving that information out through. But if we kind of just think about the most common components, and I'll click into a couple of the screens here. Typically what you're doing is you're starting with some sort of request, right? It's coming from a subsidiary, it's coming from a local business unit. After that process, there's an enrichment typically. So, all of the data obviously is not going to be held within that initial request. They don't know or maybe even care in some instances, all the data that's needed to open a bank account. And then as you go through there, you obviously have the application of the signatories. Okay, so the application of the signatories, what their roles are going to be, who is associated to the particular services, and then there's some sort of communication to the bank, whether it's predominantly still, at least from what we see, like more of a PDF documentation, like physical document over email, versus the EBAN messages therein. But that workflow is obviously all incorporated into the overall workbench. And then on the right-hand side is where you'll get more of the overall visibility, right? So again, how are we connecting to the banks? What is our overall liquidity associated to that? So again, just to kind of really quickly jump into just some of the screens here, this is an example of an open process. So you have the ability as you come into the system, you can come in and actually dictate, right, what you are even having the users enter on the screen here. So again, I've seen different, ways in which this is actually embedded in. Once that gets saved, it's going to kick off a workflow, right? So you see there's notifications. This can all be emailed. You get notifications on your phone. That gives me the ability to actually go through an approval. I can come in to actually enrich that associated to the, next step within the workflow as well. As you move through the actual dynamic component of the workflow, again, what we're doing is then giving you the visibility on the signatories themselves. So being able to kind of see all of the information associated to individual signers by bank, what the responsible parties are, as well as I know we talked about the bank portal usage as well. All of that coming back into your centralized dashboard that gives you kind of an overall cockpit of where you're sitting at any point in time.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And feel free to bring that down in a moment or so. I'll start with the first question. The first question comes from someone from the audience. For implementation, you mentioned something that it would be bank accounts go first into the system and then other areas. Is that how implementations are done by clients, this section, and then cash management liquidity, or do you do it all at once?
I think, some people might have a strong opinion on that. No matter what, though, the bank account record has to go in first. So whether it be bank account management with all of the workflows first and then cash, I think that's debatable. But I think you have to think about, the bank account record being the first thing that comes into the system because you can't bring a bank statement in the system. You can't create a payment, out of the application without the bank statement. So typically I would say that the cash management and bank account management, they would go hand in hand during a implementation.
Perfect. Question on portal management. How does your system support either maintaining the rights, access services for managing portals, and or communication with the banks?
Yeah, there's not a great out of the box like market solution for that. What we've seen or what we've tried to do is with some of our larger clients push the banks on their API framework. We've gotten pretty far with a couple of the larger banks just in terms of exposing that data to us via API. Most of the non-tier one banks, I would say, probably haven't even seriously thought about that. So it's a bit more manual in terms of like whether you're going to put it in an Excel or extract something to load in via API. A couple different options there.
Okay. So a question on supporting consistency of security or policies that a company may have. I want debit filtering, or I want some type of blocks that take place. How can your system help that?
Yeah, I think the best way, at least from my perspective, to do that, we have custom fields that you can put on the bank accounts, and within those custom fields, you can actually incorporate the workflow. So basically, what I've seen some of our customers do is they'll have like the actual services as a custom field. Those can be dropped down, they can be freeform, and within that, you can actually enable the workflow parameters, approvals, reporting off of those those custom fields.
The last question, for FBAR reporting, can you create the smart PDFs, the FinCEN format, or data from the system that would support entering that?
Yeah, so three options. It's the FinCEN, the XML upload, it's the FinCEN PDF. I forget this, like 114A, I think. And then another option, obviously, some companies will do this, just extract like an Excel and send it to tax if it's outsourced to that part of the company.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew and Kariba. Really appreciate it. I'll invite our next and final participant, which is Treasury 4, Randy DeVita and Ed Barry. If you guys would come on screen and feel free to share the deck. You're ready to go.
There we go. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Craig. And really thanks to everyone who's taking time out today to learn about all the solutions from the participants in today's webinar. So I'm Ed Barry. My role here at Treasury 4 is our Chief Product Officer, and I'm joined by my colleague, Randy DeVita today. So we're really taking a practitioner's approach to legal entity and bank account management. My background has been as a corporate treasury practitioner for over 20 years, and I've spent time at Microsoft, Itron, Tableau Software, and Salesforce, where I've had responsibility for banking administration, but also the intersection with legal entity management, whether it's creating new legal entities, both being acquired and acquiring entities, and working with a number of banks around the world. Randy has over 20 years experience implementing treasury technology for some of the leading corporates in the world here. And so we bring a lot of really, I think, foundational practitioner perspective to that. And then when we're thinking about bank account management overall, and really the big challenge for most organizations is they're managing it on spreadsheets, and not just their bank accounts, but their entity data. So, traditional banking bank account management is focusing just on the banking data itself, the account numbers, signatories. Oftentimes, there's a lack of centralized visibility and control over that data because it's typically manual. It can be error prone, and it creates friction in the KYC and client onboarding process. So again, whenever I think of KYC and client onboarding, it's not just the bank accounts, but it's also entity and the people that are involved with that entity or who are empowered by the entity through legal agreements like banking resolutions to execute those services. And then what we're all seeing is growing complexities around regulatory requirements. Many of those have been mentioned here on the call today. FBAR has got to be the biggest four-letter word in Treasury because it's been a challenge for every organization for many, many years. Now layering in the beneficial owner reporting, not just in the US, but we're starting to see that expand, similar requirements around the world. So there's a growing need for this intersection of not just bank account, but entity management. And then we've been talking about it here today, lack of visibility into who controls what and who is active. Who does the bank show? Who do you show as the signatories or the officers and directors? And so being able to bring all of that information together. So the way we think about it as a centralized solution, a single source of truth for not only legal entity data, but bank account data as well. So our foundational module within Treasury 4 is, we call it Entity 4. And really what it is, it's a collaborative system of record that brings everyone inside of the organization who's an owner, contributor, or consumer of legal entity data, as well as counterparty and financial account data. So and I think there's an important distinction there. We keep saying bank accounts, but think about all the other financial accounts that an organization has, and we'll touch on those in just a minute here. But really with Entity 4 having a centralized repository that can bring together not just Treasury, but tax, corporate legal, controllership, internal audit, maybe even external partners that you're working with that you need to share data with. Maybe it's an external auditor, one of your entities, or your tax advisors. And then thinking about all of that growing and changing data set and the legal documents that go with it. So when we think about our module of Entity 4, it's the legal entity management, being able to track things like officers and directors, generating not only a real-time organization chart, but being able to generate that org chart historically, being able to attach documents and metadata to any record in the system, and then adding the key needs for bank account management. So your counterparties, all flavors of financial accounts, not just DDA or checking accounts, could be investment custody, escrow, derivative trading, merchant processing, merchant IDs, terminal IDs, corporate card programs, and then including sub-accounts. So having that structure where you have maybe a parent account and underlying child accounts, whether that's through virtual cash management or lock boxes, and then being able to not only track all those attributes, but similar to an org chart, have an account map that shows that funding structure and relationship and document how and why does money move between bank accounts of your organization, tracking signatories, approval groups, authorization limits, and then again, all the different types of documents that might be used across the organization. So I'm going to transition a little bit and hand it over to Randy to chat a little bit about a couple of use cases that our solution supports.
Thanks, Ed. I think the foundation is Entity 4 functions as a single source of truth for bank account management. So it's answering the questions: how many bank accounts do we have by bank? Who are our signers on those accounts? What even does our funding structure look like? And it'd be nice if nothing changed, but everything is always changing. So when things are changing for our customers, Entity 4 allows them to see what is the impact of the change and what action should we actually take. So, for example, if we have a director of treasury at our Swedish division who's left the company, what accounts do we need to update with the bank? Well, we're able to come to our bank account management solution, look at our accounts, even see accounts by their status, drill into the accounts and see, well, what are the active accounts and how many accounts do we have by bank? We can look at accounts based on different profiles. What type of accounts do we have? What currencies do we have accounts in? If we drill into the Swedish accounts, we can see what are the accounts in Sweden. And then when we look at signatory management, we can see an indication of action we need to take. We have an inactive user who is still on bank accounts. And so we can drill into and see that Abigail is still listed as a signer of record on these 3 accounts. So we can go in and not remove her as a signatory, but update her signatory to be effective as a certain date, which preserves an audit trail and also gives us the ability to produce reporting as it relates to, for example, FBAR. So you retain that history. But having individuals leave the company is one example of change, and it's not always things like that. It will be just a case of opening new accounts. So if we have corporate customers who will open, and Ed, maybe you can just pop over to the next slide. Corporate customers open new bank accounts as well. And so we support documenting the KYC process with the bank. We're able to come in and see, what does the funding structure look like? What type of accounts do we have? And for an account, if we're trying to open up a new account in Canada, we're able to create a KYC org chart for the bank just for that series of companies. Go to the account that we've opened, see the details of the account. What is the opening date? What's the account number? But in addition to that, supplement the bank account that we're opening and connecting with the bank with documentation. So we've received a digital document, account opening confirmation letter from the bank. We can take that document, attach it to the bank account, categorize it so that we know it's an account opening letter, so that we have some visibility to how complete is our KYC. And then that document is something that we're able to review currently, or other users come into the system. And the platform is consistent. It's not just the accounts, it's the entity. So we preserve a history of all the documents that support KYC in the system.
Great. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Randy.
Yeah.
A quick question on the letters. Do you support digital signing back and forth to banks?
Not yet. That's in our roadmap, but not yet supported.
A question from the audience was, are there ways for both Treasury and tax and legal to be aligned with the same legal entity software and have that connected to a company's Treasury system?
The answer is yes. Really, by design, Entity 4 is meant to bring that collaborative system of record for everyone in the organization, and really specifically tax and corporate legal and Treasury to all collaborate and use as the central system of record.
And sorry, I would just add one thing. It's designed commercially. We don't charge for users, so it's intentional. We want users to get into the system from legal, from accounting, from tax, to be able to contribute and consume that information.
We call this bank account management. You correctly identified financial accounts as broader than bank accounts. What type of non-DDA accounts can be tracked? Custody, money market sweep, investment trusts, escrow, cards.
Derivative trading, merchant processing, corporate cards, including sub-accounts. And so we have customers that are tracking, say, their merchant accounts that they have with different processors, Stripe, PayPal, bank provided, and then they can link those effectively to the DDA account that those funds settle into. So now they can see really the flow of funds from these outside service providers and how and when they're going to touch the account.
Would virtual accounts be part of sub accounts, or is that different?
No, that's exactly what they are.
Okay. You showed signers by active period, keeping track of the audit trail. What about account services by active period?
That we have a full audit trail of all the attributes of an account, and we can go back and track those attributes of different services that are available.
From a money movement standpoint, does it keep track of if there's repetitive structures at the bank, if they're in the system, if they're in another TMS, if there's ZBAs or other sweep arrangements? How does that work?
Do you want to take that, Randy?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
The answer is yes. So in our account-to-account relationships, we specifically support documenting, is it a ZBA sweep, standing wire? What's the frequency? Is it one-way or two-way? So being able to understand all of those attributes and in the funding structure and how the flow of funds moves between bank accounts.
Well done. We are 6 seconds away. I can't get a question off in that time. So thank you, Treasury 4. Ed and Randy, really appreciate it. We're going to pop up our slide. I'm going to stop at the timer and back onto the screen. We have a couple poll questions, if everybody could turn their attention. And thank you, everyone, for presenting and everyone for all the great questions. I got to a lot of them. I know I missed some, so appreciate your patience with me on that. So we have 2 poll questions. The first one is select one. What's your organization's biggest challenge in bank account management? And then number 2 is we manage your bank accounts using the following: paper, digital, etc. So feel free to put those in. I'm going to advance the slide as we're doing that. As a thank you to our presenters while you're submitting those. We do have in the chat box, Brian will drop in register for the next head-to-head on working capital management on the 13th of March. So that's showing up in the chat box. We encourage everyone to register for that as well. Give everybody a chance to complete the 2 poll questions. And hit submit. As we're waiting for that, I really wanted to thank each of the solution providers: TIS, Johnny Moreland; Ion, Stephen Coglianese. I'm gonna have to pay you for butchering your name. Kyriba, Andrew Blair; Treasury 4, Randy DeVita, and Ed Berry. Well done, great job covering a lot of content quickly within the time frames. I'm really impressed. It's a joint effort, and so really appreciate your professionalism and speed in getting that done. Well done. So you can see some of the results of those poll questions. Take a look at them, see what's going on. Again, thank you to Ion, Kyriba, TIS, and Treasury 4. And thank you for spending your time listening to this edition of the Head-to-Head on bank account management, which should have been called financial account management. Thank you. Thank you so much.